I've always wanted to design and build my own scale models. But for the longest time, I was just too intimidated. I was always telling myself, you need to learn more, or you need a better idea. And this fear really prevented me from making anything. But I finally chose to stop overthinking and just start. And with my first project, I decided to make an asteroid droid. Welcome to Mutant Matter. When I say that this is my first droid build, well, that's kind of a lie. I attempted to build one before, at a super sculpting. I got a decent way done with the body, and then I showed my wife.
Looks like a chicken.
And honestly, she wasn't wrong. So I started over. Not only because of what she said, but also because Super Sculpting wasn't allowing me to create the forms I had in mind for this build. This is a type of high-density polyurethane foam. It's commonly used when prototyping products. For this project, I prefer it over the more commonly used XPS foam because it's more rigid and much easier to sand and cut. I've noticed that I'll often get stuck or reject projects in the sketching phase. So my idea was to skip all of that and just design while building. My hope was that this would get me out of my head and allow me to progress with the project much quicker. I did have a general idea of what I wanted it to look like, but the details were still unclear. So at this point, I did try to do a few sketches, but those familiar doubts started to build up again, so I stopped and told myself, I'll just figure it out later. You see, the problem is, I'm a perfectionist, and it's something I have a hard time turning off. And often, my skill level doesn't reach my unrealistic expectations, especially when I'm doing something new. With this being the first time I've documented anything that I've built, and with no real deadline, I wasted so much time trying to perfect every little detail. I would model and print parts, attach them with super glue, fill the gaps with milliput, with no clear direction of what I was trying to achieve. I was lost, and I was obsessing over the imperfections. It even got to a point where I cut off and repositioned the front legs because they seemed slightly crooked. So far, I was happy with what I had built, but I couldn't work out where to go from here. This is where developed drawings could have really helped, but I'm someone who needs to see things in 3D. I can make 100 drawings, but once I translate them to the third dimension, the reality is never quite as I imagined. A perfect example of this are these engines. I had no real idea of what I wanted to do with them, and I remade them a couple of times. I wanted every little detail to be flawless, and honestly, it sucked the fun out of the build. Perfectionism will do that to a project. It will slow it down completely, or sometimes even stop them entirely. I was stuck in what I like to call design purgatory. This is where a lot of decisions are made, reversed, changed, remade. I was stuck in a looping, time-consuming process where changes to one section would affect another. This would then throw things off visually, which then meant more changes, and on, and on, and on. What I've been working with here is a material called epoxy sculpt. It's a 2-part epoxy clay that's like sculpting with chewing gum. The problem it was causing me in my method of design while building was that it takes forever to cure and is time consuming to change after it cures. I needed to find a faster way to discover shapes on the model without it being permanent. This is Romoplastilina, a soft oil-based clay I use for sketching. This helped me test shapes quickly on the model and was easily removed afterwards. This allowed me to be more confident in the design before I committed to building it in epoxy sculpt. It really helped me speed up my progress and meant that I could spend more time thinking about the story behind this robot rather than struggling with the technical details and why it was moving so slow. I began to have fun again, and I was imagining this craft as some kind of tugboat, a small, robust machine that was made to move large objects, but also one that can maneuver in tight spaces. Once I was able to tell myself this story, it all started to make sense, and I finally had a clear path forward. I knew the arms would be a defining part of this design, and I wanted to make sure I got them right. They needed to seem flexible, but powerful at the same time. I thought I could achieve this idea with a segmented armored look. Here, you can see me building what will become the inner core of the arms. I made them from armature wire and foam. This will allow for some amount of posability even after the model is assembled. I then used this cable management mesh to cover the foam. This will help give the core of the arms a little more detail under the segmented parts. Now, I could have laboriously built these segments by hand, and they would have looked fine, but perfectionism always gets in the way. And with the shape I had in mind and my skill level, I decided to model these parts, and then I printed them on an old and shit FDM printer, which caused a lot of cleanup to make the prints even usable, so... What was the point? While we're on the topic, I would like to discuss 3D printing. It seems like a lot of people see it as cheating, but kit bashing, using pre-existing bits from other kits, is somehow more pure and a widely accepted modeling technique. To me, 3D printing parts and kit bashing are two sides of the same coin. I like to have more control over my designs. If I have a unique shape in mind, I would rather model and print it than dig through a bits box and then have to adjust my idea to fit whatever I found. Now hold on. Both techniques are great, and I'm not saying one is better than the other. I just think what matters most is how and when they're used. For these arms, and with my skill level, I thought it would just look too handmade, and I felt that detail would have taken away from the realism I wanted to achieve. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but in the end, I'm the one building it, so who am I trying to convince? Me or you? With the engines, there's not a lot to say, other than I wanted a lot of them. I wanted to give the impression that even though this might look like a smaller robot, it has a ton of power. Plus, in the vacuum of space, how much effort does it take to move around asteroids? I don't know. Also, who cares? This is fictional anyways. Right? I had already made how would you call them? The things that hold the engines? Housings? I just needed to cut out the interiors to make space for the new engines, which I also modeled and printed. Once I was happy with the proportions, I filled the housings with epoxy and smushed the engines into place. Then I accidentally broke off a piece. I tried to fix it, but I ended up cutting the entire back off, so I could rebuild the whole thing. Doing something new is challenging, and when reality doesn't meet expectations, it can be frustrating. It are these points where it becomes easy to give up, to go back to something easier, something more familiar that you're comfortable with doing. As artists, I think it's fundamental that we push through these moments, to learn to not only work outside of our comfort zones, but to thrive in it. I believe it will not only help us improve as artists, but as people as well. I experienced this feeling during this project. I almost gave up multiple times, but I didn't. Instead, I took breaks, and when I came back to it with fresh eyes, I had forgotten what was so frustrating to me in the first place. There's a common saying that often gets thrown around in the creative communities. Done, not perfect. It's a common saying for a reason, and it became my mantra. It's easy for me to get stuck in my head, listening to all the negative thoughts, but I couldn't let them win. Even if it did take me 2 years to finish this damn robot, I knew that this was something I'm meant to be doing, and I needed to see this project to the end. I was back and forth on whether or not I should make this a piloted robot, but I like the idea of it being autonomous. A machine that is utilitarian and unappreciated, left alone in a section of space, out there to accomplish a mundane job. The easier idea, and one with more mass appeal, would have been to make it more like some kind of mech, one with futuristic weaponry, and is out there trying to save the day. Like a Gundam, they are immediately recognizable and are designed with only one purpose in mind: blowing shit up. They're flashy and colorful, and honestly, they all kind of look the same, just with more or less angly bits on them. Now don't get me wrong, I love me some Gundam, but I'm interested in telling a different story with this droid, and at this moment, I would rather be focusing on topics other than combat and warfare. I think there is an unappreciated beauty in thankless jobs, ones that are accomplished in the background without a second thought, like who the fuck has to clean up after these massive Gundam space battles? Space debris is a problem, folks. Look it up. Anyways, this part of the build was a lot of fun. With each new detail I added, the story was becoming more defined. I was thinking there would need to be all kinds of sensors that can detect its surroundings and quickly survey which material is worth taking. It would be a dangerous job, so it would make sense that it isn't piloted. I was also imagining there would need to be a home base, one that I would need to communicate with, and as a place for it to dock and be worked on. This meant there needs to be ports for refueling and charging, panels that need to be opened, hatches that need to be entered, and parts that should be easily replaced. This then made me start thinking about what kind of people would be there. And I like the idea of them just scraping by in this universe and trying to make an honest living. The home base would be some kind of space hauler, and it's a home for the people that operate it. They have to travel around from asteroid fields to comet clusters, primarily looking for the most valuable resource: water. Instead of being in a universe that is expanding, the one they're living in has been quickly contracting, causing a competition for dwindling resources. While building, it's easy to find these kind of stories, and what makes doing this type of project so interesting, and why I enjoy doing them. I might have to continue with this storyline in the future and build that space hauler. Let me know what you think. As you can see, I hand sculpted some of these pieces directly on the model itself. It became a hassle to model them on the computer, print them out, wash them, cure them, only to discover that they weren't quite right. It was just easier to hand sculpt them, and I was fine with doing it this way because they were mostly one-off pieces. If I ever needed a repeating shape, I would switch to printing. This helped maintain consistency and also prevented me from banging my head off my desk in frustration. Epoxy Sculpt was great for these small parts. If you put a thin layer of Vaseline on the surface you're working on, then apply the Epoxy Sculpt and wait for it to cure, the pieces will pop right off. The stuff is magic. Even though I went on and on advocating for 3D printing, I really try to make as much as I can with my hands. If I were to try and model this entire droid on my computer, it would never have the same character. It's also nice to not have to rely on one technique for an entire process. I think this prevents things from looking too stiff and lifeless. These cables were a moment of insanity for me. Originally, the plan was to use some old guitar strings, but the gauge the cables needed to be meant that the guitar strings were just too stiff to bend into the correct shape. So instead, I made my own. I took some soldering wire and wrapped it with some super thin copper wire. I think I found this wire in an old electric toothbrush. It took a while, but it made shaping the cables to the surface of the model much easier, and I think the effect turned out pretty well. The detailing bit is always very fun. The difficult part for me is understanding when to add more and when not to. I could easily get carried away, slapping on random bits, turning the model into a visual mess. But also, not adding enough risks making it look like a toy rather than a scale model. You may have noticed me adding these spheres by the engines before, and maybe some of you might have guessed what they're for. They're a connection point for fuel tanks. I was imagining that, in this environment, the tanks might need the capability of movement, so I gave them a ball and socket look. Also, by adding these protruding fuel cells, I think it helps break up the overall silhouette of the model and creates an area of interest, which helps lead the eye from the face of the model to the back of it. And with those last details, this model is almost finished. Now we need a base. Before we dig into the painting process, I wanted to mention a pretty bad decision I made, which was gluing the arms permanently in place. This will haunt my painting process. It would have been smart to make attachment points for the arms that also allowed them to be removable. Then I could have painted this thing in sub-assemblies. But in order to save time, I decided not to do that. Lesson learned the hard way. The painting part of a project always stresses me out. Color has always been a weakness of mine. Also, I had worked a long time in this model, and I really did not want to fuck it up. A paint job can really make or break an object. It could be the most beautiful object ever created, but finish it with a bad paint job, and it'll look terrible. Anyways, to say that I was intimidated going into this paint job is putting it lightly. But I sucked it up, and I got to it. That is really the whole point of this video, and the message I'm trying to convey. It is easy to discourage yourself, to have an inner dialogue telling you that you aren't good enough, or you don't have the skill to take on that project you've always wanted to. I'm one of those people, and it's something that I struggle with daily. I know my perfectionism is a detriment to my creative process, but that is my journey. I'm trying to learn how and when is the right time to use it, and when to just let go. It can be hard and painful at times, but it is a good struggle. It is a part of the journey. Did I make exactly what I set out to do? No. Am I happy I finished? Hell yeah. Finishing is the hardest part. And from this experience, I can move on with more knowledge and just do better the next time. I think that now more than ever, it's important that you begin your journey too. We're living in a nightmare of remakes and regurgitations. There's an ever-increasing homogenization of creativity, where everything is just being blended into an indistinguishable soup. The future looks bleak, but there is hope. There are small and independent creators out there making amazing things, and you can be one of them. That is why it's important for you to get out there and make that thing that you've always wanted. Who cares if you aren't ready, or you might make mistakes? Just fucking do it. It's good to make mistakes. Often, that's where all the good stuff comes from. I want to see what you make, with all of its flaws. This is what brings real beauty into the world, and it's what we need more of in our lives. Honest beauty from real people. As dark as it all may seem sometimes, I actually started to see it as an amazing opportunity. An opportunity for new and independent people and ideas to thrive. Stop supporting the machine and start supporting yourself. Break free, unplug more, and go make something weird. With the paint job and all the weathering complete on both the droid and the asteroid, I could move on to final assembly. Once I had arranged the model in its final position, I glued all of the fingers in place. And then I added some extra epoxy sculpt to make it look like the finger pads can dig into the asteroid with an unbreakable grip. After some final touch-ups with some paint and weathering, the endless project was finally finished, and I'm super happy with the result. Let's see how it turned out. If you made it all the way here, thank you so much for watching until the end. I truly appreciate you being here. If you are interested and would like to see more, I'm going to upload a long-form tutorial version of this video on Patreon. There should be a link in the description. If you do choose to support me over there, you rock. Moving forward, I'm going to try and follow my own advice, and with luck, the next video won't take another 2 years to finish. See you all soon.